Drake came to Perth and did a doubleheader concert, and we were initially there as static guards because there were just so many patrons and there were lots of security. And all of the interactions I've had with men through my work in crowd control or personal protection, they might flirt or whatever it is, but I hold up my boundary. And in this case with Drake, he respected that boundary by walking away. Be your own first responder. So you are the asset of your life. You need to protect it. So stay on, look around you, be present at all times. If I can help at least one person look at themselves differently or to review their own personal safety and actually open their eyes and actually start assessing what's going on around them and not looking to their device, that's very empowering for both them and for me to know that. And lead with empathy. Knowledge is power. Self-knowledge is dynamite. Didn't understand until today. And that comes up to self-awareness, your own self, your safety, and your just everything, checking in with yourself at all points. So that is a superpower. To always acquire knowledge, to always be learning, and to have a high level of self-awareness and always checking in with yourself. We tend to try to remember to check in with other people, but we never check in with ourselves.
Have you ever thought about what it takes to stand between danger and safety? Not just for others, but for yourself. My guest today went from living in the shadows of self-doubt to becoming a force of protection, presence, and empowerment. Her story will leave you rethinking what it really means to be strong. Welcome back to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. It's so great to have you here. If you're watching or listening to this episode, I would encourage you to share this episode with your friends, your family, and your workmates. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe so that we can get this podcast out to the wider world. This episode is sponsored by AI Workflows agency. AI Workflows is an agency that helps small and medium businesses get out of that repetitive task and actually step into freedom where they can actually get out of that day-to-day working in their business to working on their business. So if you're working harder, it's time to work smarter. So today I'm joined by Dione Chan, who's a Filipina-Australian business owner, keynote speaker, and a director of ICP Group Australia. Once shy and introverted, Dione found her strength in the security industry and a close protection officer. After a viral moment with Drake, yes, that's Drake, who's the performing artist, during his Australian tour, she began using her platform to change conversations around safety, leadership, and presence. In this episode, Dione shares how she turned her struggles into strength and how to be your own first responder and why balancing strength with empathy is key to true leadership. Let's welcome Dione to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast.
Hi Anthony, how are you?
Good. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me here.
It's my pleasure. It's been a while in the making, but we got there in the end.
We got there.
Yeah. Dione, before we go into some questions relating to what we've been talking about, I'd love to build some context into your journey in life, how you've got to where you are today from childhood. Tell us a little bit about growing up, and I'm assuming that part of it would have been in the Philippines and then part of it in Australia, right?
Well, my mum is Filipina, but she moved here before I was born. So I am Australian born, but where I grew up was in Port Hedland, which is a regional part of Western Australia. And there was actually a very big Filipino community up there. So I was very lucky to have that culture around me. However, none of us knew how to actually speak Tagalog. So they didn't teach us to do that. So we were very much Aussified from very early on. So but the culture was quite strong. But for me growing up, I actually grew up with a skin condition called eczema. And that was quite severe for me as a child. And if anyone's familiar with this skin condition, it's like open sores. It's extremely itchy and irritable. And as a child, you just don't understand it. You were just constantly scratching. And in this regional part of WA, it's very hot all year round. So if you add heat to dry skin, it's really, really bad. So it got quite bad for me. And that kind of thing really plays on your confidence. I became very shy and very closed off. Children were okay. They weren't bullying me as such. They were more curious, but I found it was the adults and the parents that were quite cruel in the way that they approached me and didn't want me around their children because I looked contagious, really, because it got so bad. So that played a lot on my confidence. And then, strangely enough, we moved to Perth, the city of Western Australia, and my skin started to clear up as I got older. So I think it was one of those childhood eczema, and I was starting to grow out of it, and I started to get taller. And suddenly, a lot of the Filipino aunties were it was very extreme. First I'm ugly, and then suddenly, oh, you should be supermodel. So it was like, this shift of extremes made it very confusing, actually, growing up and going through adolescence, trying to identify. But I was still very shy because my foundation was to always be hidden. And so even though I tried to get into modeling on the push of my family, it just wasn't for me because I didn't feel that way. I didn't want to be on display. And so it was just very strange that when I met my husband, who was already running his security company for quite some time, he was in bodyguard work. And so he's the reason that I got into security in the first place. And for me, with my preconception of security, I thought, okay, this is cool. I can do this because I'm an introvert and I can just sit back and watch. I thought you're hidden. Nobody wants to see security. So I thought it was a great step for me to walk into that type of industry. But I learned quite a lot on the job. So and I love what I do now. So that was the foundation of how that started.
Nice. Thank you for sharing your journey up until that point. Yeah. So, what led you to become like you mentioned that obviously you were shy from everything that happened when you were younger, and what was that turning point for you where you actually turned that shyness into more confidence? What was the thing what was the moment that got you from that shyness to confidence?
It wasn't so much a turning point, to be honest, Anthony, because it was a slow progression through my work in security. So, and I didn't really understand because my husband, he guided me through this pathway. So I got into bodyguard work first and foremost. So I was in the big game before starting off small. So he led me to really get into it, and he was very strict on being laser focused and being very dedicated to your job. And so because he was, up there in terms of his level of skills, I never saw where I was progressing. And so I didn't realize that I was developing in the background. Because when you're in the vicinity of someone who is so skilled in whatever industry they are, if you're in close proximity with them, you are naturally going to develop and get better, whether you see that or not. And at that time, I didn't see it. And it wasn't until, I decided to get into more training and speaking that I was like, no, this is what I want to do. So it was progressive.
Yeah, no, that's so true. There's that saying, iron sharpens iron. So we're all at different stages in our journey in life or in the profession that we're in. And
Right.
like you are, as I say, you are some of the people that you hang around with. Following that pathway that your husband followed many years ago, um, you were able to pick up things from him, and he was able to show you things, and you naturally started to gain your confidence.
Yeah,
And it just shows that confidence isn't something that you just get. It's about consistent steps, right? That build
yeah.
competence, and then that competency then builds the confidence in yourself. So I'm a huge believer in keep doing something multiple times until you can become confident at it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, often it's the fear that stops us from moving forward.
100%. That's
But
right.
if
And when
you,
you're doing the work,
yeah,
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 you don't listen to
yeah,
the self-talk because you are so engaged in trying to reach that level because you're in that proximity. You're just like, you can see what you can see, you can be, and that's all you're focused on. You're not listening to all that negative
exactly.
self-talk.
And I saw on the website that your husband had was the bodyguard for Arnold Schwarzenegger as well. And so, as he says in Commando, he says, "I eat green berets for breakfast." That's where we get to eat fear for breakfast, right? And if we have fear for breakfast, then the rest of the day is going to go really, really well.
Oh gosh, yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Oh, you can tell your husband that.
Yeah, I'll let him know.
Beyond protection and beyond physical protection, what are some of the unexpected skills that you have developed in the security industry?
Unexpected
Mm,
definitely would be the self-awareness, because I thought, that I could sit back and observe and there's just come in when I need to. But there's a lot of self-awareness that's needed because it then takes you into the step of what you're going to do next. Because say, for
mm,
example, I've had a really rough day or even if you were mourning or doing something that could affect your emotion, you have to acknowledge that that might impact your work or your next decision. So learning that on the job really helped to see how I wanted to navigate myself in my scope of work. And where I originally thought that, I had to have a strong presence or be as intimidating as my male counterparts, I actually found strength in my empathy and dealing with people that way because I'm aware of how I'm feeling and that I don't feel comfortable confronting somebody. I'm not of that, and I've tried to avoid confrontation as much as possible because of my upbringing. So how else do I go through that? How else can I de-escalate a situation? And so I've really learnt over time that learning about myself helped me deal with other people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when you have that self-awareness, and awareness is so, I believe awareness is the first step, right? When you in any journey in life, if you're not aware of what's going on, then you're not likely to go anywhere. And then from there you go on a discovery phase of like, okay, well, let's go and get curious about this and start looking into it. Yeah.
That's right.
Was any other things that for you that popped up during that journey?
Yeah, I would say the risk assessment as well,
Mm,
because quite often I think when we go through school, we know about risks on a very minor level. So we know about water safety, we know about fire safety, we know about sharp objects. So we know all these things not to do to avoid that situation. So the action has a consequence. But there was nothing really that we taught about personal safety. We a lot of us learnt about stranger danger, and I know I was taught that as well. And so being an introvert, I was like, yep, that's easy because I don't want to talk to anyone anyway. So, but then in the scope of work with security, I have to deal with strangers all the time. And even in a protective role, I'm now protecting people that I have no personal or emotional connection with. So that way of thinking just was completely obsolete because it couldn't work in my scope of work to have that stranger danger aspect. And so risk assessment is where it's at because you can assess that with every person you meet, every workplace you work into, and any situation, whether you're taking on a new client, you can do all of that. Just assess the risk at all points of your life.
Yeah. And how did you learn to do the risk assessment? Like what was was it courses that you did, or was it just something that you naturally sort of gained yourself?
I really learnt on the job through personal protection, Anthony, because
Mm,
imagine, we're protecting a VIP, okay? So
mm,
that means from the moment that we are like guiding them into a vehicle, you're assessing the risk outside, inside the vehicle, when they come out the vehicle, on the road, so at every point, you're just having to do that. When you enter a room, you've got to scan it from top to bottom to make sure there's nothing that stands out that could possibly pose a risk. And then you're dealing with people who want to be close to that VIP, and you've really, really got to analyze their facial expressions, their body movements, and suddenly you're
mm.
learning to really pick up small things at every given moment. And so that's where that really developed for me because you're doing it
Mm.
so often on the job that it becomes natural in your everyday life. So that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you've got that awareness all the time, right? About
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Is it like like you've got to be so switched on? How do
Hmm.
you so if that's how you are all the time, then how do you get to relax and shut off and just not worry about risk?
In the early days, when you are like on all the time, yeah, it does start to weigh on you. But honestly, just like any skill set that you do, the more you do it, the more you practice it, it almost becomes unconscious, and it's no longer something you think about because
Mm,
it's automatic now. And that's the beauty of it. And that's why it's just great that I'm very blessed to have learnt this skill set because it is automatic for me. And especially now as a mum, I can really apply that to my day-to-day life.
how old are your kids, by the way?
I've got one son, he's 3.
Three. Yeah. So so
Best day.
you'll be teaching your son about risk awareness and all that sort of stuff as you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they comprehend it a little bit differently, but it's the more you repeat it and just have these conversations like it's normal is where it's going to help.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll be dealing with with you said VIPs, and some of those VIPs will be quite well known,
Mm.
and some of them may not be well known. How do you how do you like deal with that sort of, I guess, the celebrity shock, or
Mm.
initially meeting them and this and that? How does that happen? How do you deal with that?
I'm so glad you asked that, Anthony, because I do get that question a lot. And again, it's now become an automatic thing, but I will tell you how I got to that point because um, the important part when you're dealing with any VIP is really to remove the stars. And when I say remove the stars, I mean remove that filter, remove that
Mm,
celebrity filter, and look at what is going on. Because when you're looking at from a security aspect, you're looking at the risks that that type of person could bring, the demographic that they attract, and the areas in which they're going to be moving. So now you're just looking at the facts and you're no longer looking at this celebrity status, whether you're a fan or not. That doesn't apply to the job that you need to carry out, right? And so and I tell people this in my workshops as well, is when you remove the filter, so no matter if it's a celebrity or VIP, it could be your manager. It could be someone of a higher financial status than you. Why should they be treated any differently? Because, and I feel like this filter affects the way that people compromise their own safety and their own
mm,
needs, because they think that, oh, he's the manager or they're in a higher position than me. And so I'm just going to speak this way, or I'll just let them do it, or I don't deserve that kind of thing. And you're no longer looking at what you need for yourself because you've now put them up on a pedestal. For what reason? They're still a human being. So once you remove
mm.
that filter, you go, okay, you know what? I can do what he's doing. I can do that too. Or I need to speak up in this situation. So yeah, I feel like that doing that practice, it has to come with practice, obviously,
The
and
practice,
again,
yeah.
it's all self-awareness again. So once you realize, okay, am I actually starting to see this person up there? I don't want this to compromise the way that I speak, because people suddenly go into shock, or they just go weird. They just act weird for whatever reason. So, but you want to be yourself, and you want to be in control at all times. So that's the important thing there, is just practicing it. And you can just practice it from people you meet, and then by the time that you deal with someone of that status, you're like, eh.
Well, take us back to a moment where you met someone, you know, mildly, sort of famous or something, and like, what was it like? What was that moment like? The first moment where you actually went, okay, here's someone who's a little bit well known, or
um, I mean, Drake is a perfect example of that,
perfect
because
example. There we go. Yeah.
because but I mean, obviously by that point when that interaction happened, it was I've already established that skill. So I was already halfway through the job, and I just looked at him as a client. So dealing with him was not of anything. But
But when you first started out, like, what was it? Like, can
when
you
I
think of
first
them?
started out,
Yeah. Can you think of a moment where you're like a little bit starstruck, and like, how did you handle that situation in the early days?
one of my first jobs of someone quite big was our former Prime Minister, Honourable Julia Gillard. So I had to do a short job for her, and I said, yeah, I remember initially thinking, oh wow, because I've only ever seen her on TV and things. So I could feel myself, getting sort of worked up, which normal people, would do, and I just thought, oh my gosh, that's her. She's amazing. And I love her. Do I talk to her? Do I not? And then I just put myself back in my zone. I was like, no, you have a job to do, and I looked at her as well, and I saw her in her own zone. Like, she's just so on and professional, and she was really in control of her space and her calendar and everything. And it was actually her that kind of reminded me of what I need to be doing, because I saw the example in her, and then I just replicated it and went, you know what? She's in control. I'm in control. And again, that goes back on the importance of who you're in the proximity with, right? So yeah, that would be the closest thing. Other than that, I've not been, starstruck.
Totally, yeah. Thank you for that. So let's go back to the Drake moment, right?
Yeah.
So, so tell us what really happened. And I saw the short video of it, or
You did.
or an image. I don't know if I saw the video, but I saw an image of it. So tell us what really happened with that Drake interaction, and how did going viral shift your mission or message?
Okay. All right. So just a bit of context, for anyone that hasn't seen it. So Drake came to Perth and did a double-header concert, and we were initially there as static guards because there were just so many patrons and there were lots of security. So we were there as static. However, a lot of these type of jobs at events, you find out the logistics on the day. And so we got there, and it was being explained to us how mammoth this actual event was going to be, because Drake had an entire catwalk created around the entire arena, and he was going to be moving within his fans quite frequently. And so for him to be that close to his fans and moving all the time, his personal security needed more backup. And so my husband, with all of his vast experience, was asked to form a team within our small group to be working alongside the internal security for Drake. And I was part of that team because of my experience. So, and that's why I was there where I was, in that vicinity of him at the time of the interaction. And so with regards to the video, he's walking through his fans, greeting them, shaking hands, everything. And I was guarding the stairs that he was walking up. And he had seen me and pulled me into in front of the camera and started flirting. And he asked me if I was married and asked me if I had a ring on. And I said, yes. And he said, oh, you do? Okay, no worries. And he walked off. And it was all quite funny, but really short interaction, Anthony, really like 20 seconds, nothing, right? It was a bit of a laugh, so we just left it at that. However, the next day, my phone was blowing up a little bit with videos and texts from people and even relatives from different areas of the world that had seen it. It had gone viral on TikTok. And it was just a very strange morning to wake up to. Uh, but yeah, again, it just seemed like, okay, there's nothing wrong with the interaction itself. So I just thought there's no issue here. However, as time went on, I started to see how like people were commenting about, oh, she'll regret that, but I bet she went home and she was just playing Drake all night, or I would have just thrown my ring away and just gone with him. And I thought, is this really how people think? You know what I mean? Is this like you've actually put your whole life like just because he's a celebrity? I had that, I was really struggling to understand that, but that's the point in which made me think, okay, I need to do something with this, because for me and all of the interactions I've had with men through my work in crowd control or personal protection, they might flirt or whatever it is, but I hold up my boundary. And in this case with Drake, he respected that boundary by walking away. And so for me, that's a very successful interaction, because he didn't then keep pushing. He wasn't persisting. He wasn't being aggressive. So for me, that's a general interaction. And I thought maybe people start seeing how important it is that it's okay to say no, and it's okay to accept a no. A no isn't always a rejection, it's a redirection. And so for him, he just said, okay, no worries, and he walked off. So clearly he's not feeling rejected, but his fans were commenting like, oh, she'll regret that. Like, why are they getting defensive for him? He's not caring. He walked off and he's fine with it. So it's okay.
He respects,
yeah.
He respects that you're married and
move on. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just feel, especially for young people, like not to get caught in that rejection. So whether it's from, someone that you want to be with, or if it's from a job that you really want to apply for and you get rejected, that doesn't mean the end of things. It's just a redirection. That's not for you, but you still have options. So don't get stuck in that no and that rejection. So I felt like there was such a stronger message there that I could start talking about and opening conversations around.
Yeah, look, in my past, there's been many times where I reacted that way of being rejected. But with what I learned back then, or what I learned now looking back, is that there were things that I had to work on in my own life, right? Because I wasn't secure in myself, and I was putting my power into someone else's hands, and so on. So and I was seeking validation from someone else. And it wasn't until I think it was 2021 for me that I actually realized, hang on, it was literally, I think it was 2021 or around COVID, where I realized that I didn't need validation from anyone else, and that I could validate myself. And I think it's not until you get to that point where you've healed through those, challenges in life, those insecurities and the trauma that you've been through. Every one of us has been through trauma. So I think, it's people are speaking from a place of
hurt,
trauma and hurt and so on.
Yeah.
But if they were actually healed,
yes,
or then they wouldn't react that way, right? So
exactly.
yeah. So as we said before, self-awareness is key,
Yeah.
To knowing who you are, and then not caring about what situation
Exactly.
happened or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, so, bec so becoming your own first responder. Tell us a little bit about that. What does being your own first responder look like in everyday life?
Yeah. So the reason I came up with that, I've actually come up with a framework, Anthony. So aside from security work, I also have a first aid business. And second to that, I'm also a volunteer ambulance officer. So first response is very much my life.
Mm,
But the reason I feel that this is really an area that people can tap into and learn is because we just never really put our own personal safety first. We just, I mean, you think of the acronyms in first aid, right? What are they? Doctors, A, B, C, D. And the first one is danger. Okay, you look for danger. Is any danger being presented to me? And then you then go and seek for a response from the victim or the injured person, see if they're responding, are they conscious? And then you send for help. But most of the time, when it comes to us and our own personal safety and the way that we're feeling, we can see the danger, or we can see a serious situation. And instead of doing anything about it or checking in with ourselves, why aren't we checking in with ourselves? How are we responding to this? Name the emotion and say how it's affecting you. It could be bullying at work, or it could be a dangerous situation at home, whatever it is. How am I feeling? Name the emotion and then send for help. It's sort of, if you can't deal with it yourself, then you send for help, like reach out and find avenues to help you out of that situation. And so my framework is very similar, but I've structured it so that it can be applied to any sort of daily activity. So yeah, so let's go through some of those steps. So the first
mm,
one being S, okay? S is scan for information. Scan it like a QR code. So whatever it is, if it's a new workplace or if it's a new contract or if it's a person in front of you that you're meeting, scan for all the information, collect it all, everything. Like don't hold back. Even if it's their body language, but or something about their history, or mainly if something doesn't sit with you. Yeah, that guy's got really good manners, but something's just not sitting well with me. Acknowledge that, take it, right?
mm,
And use that
mm,
within your assessment of what you're going to do next, whether you're going to hire them, whether you're going to engage with them, whatever it is. And then the second step is A, is to acknowledge your emotion. How am I feeling meeting this person? How am I feeling being in this workspace? Is it vibing with me? Is this triggering for me? Like, name it. Because when you name the emotion that you're experiencing, you actually it actually reduces the severity of
mm.
it. It's not as
Yeah.
big as it is in your head once you name it out loud, right? And so the next step is to find your response. So we're going SAFE, safe, right? That's the safe framework. We're on F. So find your response. Am I going to engage with this person? Am I going to speak up? Am I going to set my boundary? Or do I need to escalate it somewhere else, right? And finally, engage or escalate is the final step. And the reason I do this last step is literally to make sure you follow through. So,
Yeah.
because you can have all the information, you can feel shitty about it, and you know what to do. But then if you don't actually do it or escalate it, you're going to be sitting in that and you're going to be stuck, right? So that
Mm.
next step is to help you follow through. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really good advice and great steps. Thank you. So, how do we prepare the next generation? How do we as parents or educators better prepare young people to handle real world safety challenges? And now also, I'd like to also ask you from what we do on a daily basis, but also with the advancements in technology and so on.
Yeah. So, in regards to parents and educators, is really to have the conversation. I mean, as parents or educators, as adults, really, we've all been through situations, but for some reason we don't talk out these real life scenarios with our kids or with our students. What
Mm,
can we do? And actually just talk about it and play out that real life scenario. Don't worry about making them scared, because it is scary out there, but just say it as it is. And the more that you
yeah,
have these conversations, no matter how hard hitting they might be or how uncomfortable it might make them, you've got to have it. And eventually it'll be so normal that when something does happen, they're comfortable to come and approach you about it.
yeah.
The worst thing is not being able to talk to anybody. And that's what we're finding. There's so much anxiety with young people, and such a high risk of suicides because they can't reach out for help. And we don't
Mm,
want that.
yeah. And what about like with technology and like with, all the social media and AI and all of these things? I'm sure you've thought about that. What are your thoughts on that, and how do we prepare our children for that next generation
Oh,
for the
it's
for
yeah,
the
that one's
what's coming?
yeah.
Yeah.
That because it's constantly evolving, Anthony. It's such a vast area, isn't it?
Mm.
It's even scary for us as adults,
Mm-hmm.
to navigate through it. So again, the main thing would be just having conversation around it, speaking about it. There are a lot of students that, I will say this from what I've heard from other mental health educators, is that there's a lot of talk around pornography and how normal that is for young
Mm.
for young boys, and yet there's no conversation about it with their parents or anyone else. And so where are they sourcing this information? Online or from other peers? And you don't want them to have that type of information because it's highly, either diluted or completely incorrect. So this is why that conversation needs to be had, because second to that, it's also connecting. There's human connection. We're so disconnected when we're on our phones and all our devices. So just connect with these kids and talk to them. Just talk, and
Mm.
just find other ways to build community. Highly encourage them to get involved in community, because when there's something going on in their life where they can give back, that really helps to shift the mindset.
Yeah. Do you work with parents as well? Like, do you work with the parents to help and the children as well?
Yeah, I'm going down that pathway. So originally
Mm.
my workshops are with young people, high school students, but there is a call for parents as well, because obviously they want to be able to have those conversations, but maybe might not know how to initiate it. And so
Mm.
having a session with myself can lead that conversation that they otherwise might not be comfortable opening up. You don't want to just be setting the table at dinner and then try to talk about sex education, or like it becomes awkward for both parties. So sometimes that setting with the parent and the child can just help encourage the conversation. But obviously, we want to make sure that it continues back home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't imagine like if you've got a family sitting at a dinner table to be wanting to have a conversation specifically to someone about that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they wouldn't want to, yeah, they'd feel ashamed. So you've moved from working in the shadows to working to speaking on stage. Firstly, what was that like for you? Because you talked about shyness and so on. So what was it like going from the shadows to the stage? And then what was the internal shift that you made that made it possible for you to get up there on stage and be able to deliver a speech
Yeah.
or a talk?
It
Yeah.
was very scary. And there were so many moments that I just went, what am I doing? This is very uncomfortable. Just get out of there. But what I still tell myself today as well, Anthony, before I get on, is that is not about me. If I can help at least one person look at themselves differently, or to review their own personal safety and actually open their eyes and actually start assessing what's going on around them and not looking to their device. That's very empowering for both them and for me to know that. So when I remove myself as speaking or educating, and I just go from the way how I would have liked to have received it at that age or at that angle or from whatever I was going through, and then it shifts the way that I deliver the message. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're self-consumed, um, you don't tend to, like, the fear keeps you held back, right? But when you're serving others and you're doing it for the benefit of others, then you do tend to move through that fear.
Yes.
And so my advice is anyone who's feeling scared of speaking in public, yeah, like Dion said, you know, do it. Think of it that you're not doing it for yourself; you're doing it for others, and you're serving
Yeah.
others, and your fear will quickly go away because you're not focusing. You're not focusing on yourself. You're focusing on other people as well. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. And I use
yeah,
that angle because that works for me, Anthony. Some people use, just do it. They're very like, yeah, just get up there and get it. And I'm just like, no, I can't. I have to do it from an empathetic level, right? Because that's just my superpower. So how do I need to approach this? I'm doing it for them, not for me. So, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's about authenticity, right? You've got to be authentic. You've got to be true to yourself and show up as yourself, not as someone else. Otherwise, you're being an imposter. So, which is not what we want. And talking about empathy, so with that comes a lot of strength because you're, like you said before, when you're doing something over and over and over again, it becomes second nature to you. So you build up that strength, and the empathy is what you just mentioned before. So in these high pressured environments, how do you balance the strength with empathy, and why does it matter?
Yeah. So high pressure situations, we get that a lot with security. I mean, you can imagine with a crowd control type of role, I've got to do a lot of de-escalation. But the great thing is that I'm generally in a really good team. And so when you know that, again, this comes back to knowledge. I know that I've got avenues that I can use. I've got resources. And so empathy is my superpower. So I tend to go with that. That actually is my strength. There's no strength and empathy. That is my strength. And so I can assess it and I can see how that person might be feeling or how their behavior has played out through that time that I've been watching them, and come in at an angle as if I've known them, for ages. And if I need to move them on, or if I need to apply a rule for the venue, say, for example, they've gone outside with alcohol and they're not allowed to go outside with alcohol. I'm not just going to go there and go, hey, guys, just get back inside. If I see that they're a couple and they're arguing, or there's a girl, she's crying, you just go with that first, and lead with empathy, and then apply what you need to do, because then they'll come. There's nothing restricting it anymore. There's not going to be any resistance because you've led the way.
Yeah, and you've got to meet them where they're at, like, right? Yeah, absolutely. So Dion, if people have been listening to this or watching this episode, and they feel like they want to get in touch and they want to learn more about what you do, tell us how they can get a hold of you. How can they enroll in your the programs that you have, and learn more about what you do.
Yeah, so you can reach out either on social media, that's Security Lady, either on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, our website also has a platform for you to fill out a form, and that's icpgroup.australia.com.au.
I like that. Security Lady.
That security lady.
That security lady. That security lady. Got it. Cool. All right. Let's see how you how you handle yourself under quickfire questions.
Okay.
This has been a fun conversation, by the way.
I'm glad.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so how do you define success, and has that definition changed for you over time?
I used to view success as numbers, number of clients, and just getting the job done, right? But I feel like that has definitely evolved because if you don't find joy in what you're doing, uh, it just becomes repeat. And so I feel like the definition of success is finding joy in what you do, but also giving yourself the freedom to do
Mm.
to reach out and do more. You know, find your purpose, reach out to people and connect with people. And I never used to even consider that, Anthony, because as I previously was an introvert, the last thing you want to do is meet more people and connect with people. But I feel like that is the essence of the purpose of your life, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because we often think that it's my purpose, which means that it's me only, and
Yeah.
it's like, no, no man is an island. And it's like we all need someone or people around us to help us,
Hmm.
achieve our goals or our purpose. And so, your purpose is to educate people with safety and security, right? So, you can't do it on your own. You
Hmm.
need people around you. Yeah. Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
Or this will have to be my husband without being biased. And that's really because he's been such an example right from the beginning, and not just through security, but in life, because he's got this very natural discipline and laser focused on just getting things done. So he's very strong in that aspect. But at the same time, he's got that great balance of really connecting with people and
Mm,
having fun. So I
mm,
just find that he's juggled that really well, and I think a lot of us tend to struggle with one or the other. It's either you're just going to have fun and do stupid things, or you're just going to be completely embedded in your work. But he's
mm.
managed to find that. So I've always admired that about him, and I always kind of look to that as my inspiration to do the same.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
That I think the security industry is actually for women,
Mm,
right? Because there's so much like EQ skills needed, communication, de-escalation. This is all stuff we do, especially as parents, right? So yeah, I feel like that's people might not agree with that. And I know some people haven't because they feel that security should just be with men because of purely because men are stronger physically, but not every situation requires physical strength. So that was my angle for that.
mm. If you could go back and give your younger self a bit of advice, what would it be?
Oh, do you know, I read something when I was a teenager and it made no sense to me at the time. And it was knowledge is power, self-knowledge is dynamite. And I knew it was something important, but I didn't understand until today. Self-knowledge is dynamite, and that comes out to self-awareness, your own self,
Mm,
your safety, and your just everything checking in with yourself at all points. So that is a superpower.
nice. I like that. Self
Yeah.
knowledge is dynamite.
Yes.
Yeah. What is one message that you like to share with the world?
To be your own first responder. So you are the asset of your life. You need to protect it. So stay on. Yes, just stay switched on. Look around you. Be present at all times.
Nice. Like it. Love it. And what does it mean to you to be a champion and to have a champion mindset?
To always acquire knowledge, to always be learning, and to have a high level of self awareness and always checking in with yourself. You know, we tend to try to remember to check in with other people, but we never check in with ourselves. So see where you're
Mm,
at and acknowledge it and be okay when you're not okay. You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dion, for sharing all of these insights here and your story And yeah, it's been inspirational. I'm sure people who've been watching this or listening to this have got a lot out of this. And I encourage you, if you haven't, reach out to Dione or learn a little more about what she does, what her business does, which is at icpgroupaustralia.com.au. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with your friends and your family or your workmates, and leave a review. And remember that safety and leadership both begin from within. And be aware of what's happening in your life, what's happening for you. Also be your first own responder, and step forward with courage and empathy. And lastly, I just want to say we're going to put all these links into the show notes so that you can click on them and visit. Lastly, I want to say you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.